If you click this video hoping for the Disney Hunchback of Notre Dame, don't click away. You don't know it yet, but Universal's is so much better. It's a movie so ambitious, it built a replica of the Notre Dame Cathedral in California, it transformed an entire studio, and it nearly broke its star in the process. So many people only know Disney's Hunchback of Notre Dame or only know the movie as Universal's first monster movie, which it kind of is, but it is so much more than that. I'm Antonia Carlotta, and this is Universally Me, the channel for all things Universal and classic horror. My family started Universal Studios. They made The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and I'm going to take you behind the scenes of this incredible movie. So let's set the stage. It's the early 1920s and Hollywood is booming. There was kind of this time where nobody knew if the movie industry was just like a trend or a fad, a flash in the pan. But now by the 1920s, Hollywood is established and studios are becoming empires. Now, Universal for sure was a big studio, but amongst the other big studios, it was kind of a smaller fish. They weren't really known for releasing big budget movies. They would kind of churn out as many smaller budget films as they could each year. Low risk, low reward. But now in the early 1920s, audiences are starting to crave more. They want these big emotional spectacles. Enter Lon Chaney. Lon Chaney was an actor with this gift of transforming into any role he played. He would absolutely disappear into them. You might also recognize him, or not, from The Phantom of the Opera in 1925. Well, Lon Chaney was the one in 1921 to buy the rights to The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and he was determined to play Quasimodo. He didn't take The Hunchback to Universal at first. I think he might have still been a little upset over being denied a pay raise a few years earlier. So he took it to a couple other studios, even internationally. He just wanted to get this movie made. But finally, he links up with Irving Thalberg, who's at Universal, and the two of them decide that they're going to pitch the movie to studio head Carl Laemmle as this artistic prestige film that will take Universal to the next level. And Uncle Carl is on board. The Hunchback got a budget of $1.25 million at a time when most movies were getting maybe a couple $100,000. A big portion of the budget went to building these grand sets on a scale almost never seen before. They built a replica of the Notre Dame Cathedral and these big, beautiful Parisian cobblestone streets, and they had more than 2,500 extras. Now, this probably would have been a nightmare to wrangle, but one of the things that made it a little bit easier is that Hunchback of Notre Dame was the first ever movie to use the on-set PA system. So here's a picture of the director and two cameramen with the PA system. This allowed him to project his voice across these giant sets so that the cast, the crew, and the extras could all hear his notes. And I will say, I think the crowd scenes are so worth it because they breathe so much life into the city, and it contrasts so beautifully with Quasimodo's loneliness. Actress Patsy Ruth Miller plays Esmeralda, and I could watch her all day. I just absolutely love her. There are some actors in the film who can be a little melodramatic. It sometimes feels downright comedic, but Patsy Ruth Miller is fantastic. Norman Carey is also in the film as Phoebus, and I just have to wonder because I know that by the time Phantom of the Opera came around in 1925, Lon Chaney and Norman Carey hated each other, and I have to wonder if it started on this film. Now, when it came to the director, the first name they threw around was Erich von Stroheim. He had a lot of experience, he'd worked on big budget films, but he was also notoriously difficult to work with. He had a reputation for going over time and over budget, including at Universal. When he worked on Foolish Wives for them, he actually went so far over budget that Uncle Carl put a billboard up in Times Square with a rolling number for how far over budget the movie was going. And then they did hire Erich von Stroheim again for this movie called Merry-Go-Round, but not even halfway in the film, he was already so over budget that they just fired him. So by the time Hunchback comes around, he is persona non grata at Universal. So then there's this brief time where Todd Browning, Dracula Todd Browning, was attached, but ultimately Wallace Worsley got the job. You might say, who's Wallace Worsley? Yeah, he was kind of an unconventional choice. He hadn't done a movie of this scale before. He wasn't a super well-known director, but he had worked with Lon Chaney a couple times before. And I have to think that maybe because Lon Chaney was the one who bought the rights, because Lon Chaney liked a certain amount of artistic control over his productions, he probably had a say in getting Wallace Worsley hired. He probably knew that they would be able to collaborate well together, that he would continue to have a say in production. And honestly, Wallace Worsley, Lon Chaney, both of them, they pulled it off. They managed the huge sets and huge crowds and didn't let them manage them. And they made this really beautiful movie. And again, like, the film industry is kind of in its infancy. So it's a really big accomplishment when you think about it. And of course, no conversation on the Hunchback of Notre Dame would be complete without talking about Lon Chaney's incredible transformation. He was truly incredible at disappearing into his roles in the best way. Like, I look for his face in Quasimodo and I can't find it. And it's so easy to take like makeup and special effects for granted these days. But Lon Chaney was a trailblazer. He was inventing the ways to use these tools and these materials to transform. He would use wax. He had fake teeth. My Aunt Carla said he used to put walnuts in his cheeks to like stretch them out. He had a prosthetic hump. He had braces on his legs. It took him about 3 hours every day to put on all of his makeup. And then it was so grueling that he could only keep it on for about 6 hours at a time. And I think the leg braces ended up giving him like leg problems for the rest of his life. So he endured so much for the sake of art. My Aunt Carla actually also used to tell a story of, my Aunt Carla, she grew up living on the Universal Studios backlot. The backlot was like basically her playground as a kid. She also was the prima ballerina in Phantom of the Opera, and she spoke the opening lines in Dracula. She lived to be 104 years old, so I actually knew her for a good portion of my life, and she was amazing. She would tell the story of wandering the backlot as a kid and just stumbling upon the filming of The Hunchback of Notre Dame and getting to see Lon Chaney in costume and climbing on the cathedral. And she too, in person, just thought he was absolutely brilliant. And, I'll say another one of Lon Chaney's greatest gifts beyond just the transformation is how he still brings so much humanity to the role. And he's still able to express emotion so clearly, even though you can't see like 95% of his real face. It is incredible how watching him, you still feel for him and feel with him. I think that even in the 1920s, like audiences who had no understanding of makeup and special effects, who had never seen a face like his before, they had no choice but to be moved by his work. When The Hunchback of Notre Dame came out in 1923, it was clear it was a gamble that paid off. You'll remember the budget for the film was about $1.25 million, while it earned more than $3.5 at the box office. It's also kind of the first step in establishing the Universal monsters, though of course that's going to come later. And it really gave Universal the confidence to keep pushing artistic boundaries. The Hunchback has themes of love, loyalty, injustice, obsession, sacrifice, so many more. It's one of those movies that you can watch over and over again and find something different every time. And people love to call it Universal's first monster movie. I don't completely subscribe to that, but I guess I see it. But it is so much more than just a monster movie. And of course, it also inspired a ton of remakes. The 1939 with Charles Laughton and Maureen O'Hara, the 1956 with Gina Lollobrigida and Anthony Quinn. There's a 1976 one that I'd never actually heard of, and a couple of TV movies. And then, of course, we have our modern Disney classic. So I know I'm going to set myself up for some heartbreak here, but tell me in the comments your favorite version of The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Of course, mine is the 1923. And also, if you like these old Hollywood deep dives, classic horror deep dives, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, share, do all the things. And don't forget that paid members on YouTube get bonus videos, podcasts, pictures, and more. So it's a great way to support my work. You should do it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye.